With the Sirens of Time finished, it was time for another Doctor Who story just 2 months after the first one was finished. Luckily, it was already in the works. Mark Gatiss was ready to go. He was at the meeting of Doctor Who writers in January of 1999, and 2 days after the meeting, he sent an email to Gary Russell with his idea for a fifth Doctor story. What we got was Phantasmagoria, written by Mark Gatiss, directed by Nicholas Briggs, with cover art by James Arnott, and it was a Fifth Doctor and Turlough story. Turlough is an interesting choice to start with, considering most of Five's early audio adventures were with him and Nyssa by themselves. But he is very entertaining here. The story starts with an introduction welcoming Peter Davison back, which is technically true, in that this is his first full story, but this is his second big finish, so it's just a little odd, but it is a nice thing to have here. This story had two working titles. It was either going to be called The Chamber of Blood or Restoration. And in some ways, those are better titles. But Chamber of Blood fits much better for a pure horror story. And this has elements of horror stories, like the psychic powers. But the story itself, I would not really say is a horror story. Phantasmagoria starts with a collector of weird things who is hearing psychic voices when the Doctor and Turlough arrive and claim to be bringing the TARDIS in to add to his collection, which later the Doctor does admit it's actually his spaceship, and he actually takes the guy inside. So, yeah, that was good padding for the time. The story also involves aliens who are looking for someone who's presumably an alien from their group, and a mysterious card player named Valentine, whom I only found out during my second listen is played by Mark Gatiss. He does an amazing performance here. Valentine sounds like a stereotypical mustache-twirling villain, but it's also really fun to do a mustache-twirling villain. So, he's very entertaining. This story is mostly about doing atmosphere well. This has the kind of atmosphere that's very similar to the Doctor Who story I talked about 2 weeks ago, The Talons of Weng-Chiang, minus, the racism. Also, based on the cover of the CD, it's a release that deals with playing cards. Valentine has playing cards that are technology that he uses to track and trap people to use as fuel for his ship. The Talons comparisons continue. Well, yes, I am able to randomly point it and see some bits of comparison. That was a genuinely randomly selected Doctor Who story. I did not think these would line up at all. But, yeah, that is kind of the main plot. It's just a villain who's trying to fuel his ship using random citizens. I need to talk about some other elements of this. Even though I listened to this audio twice, I'm not sure what the psychic powers the collector guy has was for. And the other alien looking for Valentine is there, but she's communicating with other aliens those communications are present throughout the story. And I don't think those other aliens show up at the end, which ends up just leaving the story with a very scattered feeling. It is nice to have a single story that technically has less of a sprawling story problem that the Sirens of Time technically did, but this story also genuinely still feels like it's kind of going all over the place. I didn't even really mention until this point that after one of those psychic bursts I mentioned, Turlough disappears to another part of the city, and him and the Doctor can't find each other for a long time. It's like multiple episodes. There's also a highwayman whose relevance to the plot doesn't matter till episode 4. There's just so much that it feels like it's filler, but at least the atmosphere is nice. Paraphrasing from the new Audio Adventures book, if Mark Gatiss had the chance to rewrite the story in the then-now of 2003, he would have spent more time thrashing out the plot, and he's quoted as saying, "I think the atmosphere is great, but that's not enough to sustain 4 episodes. And I will say, as a reviewer, it is bizarre to have listened to this multiple times and find the writer of the story providing the best critique of it that I possibly could have done. I just wish I had more to say about this story, but because of the scattered nature of the plot elements and the story basically sustaining on atmosphere, it makes it hard for me to retain many parts of the story in my head. The biggest thing that stands out is the end of part 3, which is interesting enough. I'm not going to say what it is. It was slightly kneecapped in part 4, but it's still a decent twist and works well. But there's frankly just so many parts of this story that I can't remember it, so it's hard for me to have a ton more to say about it. So, yeah, I think I'm just gonna stop it there. After the Sirens of Time was 4 words in, 4 words. That's gotta be a record. Like the psychic powers bit, I could definitely see that being in a horror movie, and I think have seen. Yeah, I've definitely seen that in a horror. What am I talking about? It's nice to have a single story that is technically having less things go over.